appreciate them coming to the table and doing that with us. It still doesn't cover everything, and there's still the rest of the side of the budget that we have to deal with if the revenues come down. And then we also have potentially, at least we anticipate the goal of the part of the goals of the FCMAT studies, we're identifying areas that we might be able to create savings in transportation and special education to help reduce the contribution that's needed from the general fund for those programs. And then we kind of have the big question mark too with regard to mental health funding. They keep cobbling together pieces of the state budget to keep it funded, but they're in the process over the next couple of years of trying to get it to a per ADA level of funding. That hurts us as a district because we serve more than our percentage of share with regard to number of students that we're serving for mental health services. For example, our neighbors to the south, San Ramon Valley, they're just a few thousand students smaller than we are. But we're about 9 times the size of them in number of students that we serve. And so it's a dramatic difference when you fund based on caseload versus funding on per ADA. As many districts, if you were around in school business back about 15 to 20 years ago when the old J50 system converted into the AB 602 funding model, there were a lot of districts that, if they had very high caseloads back then, hurt dramatically over that funding when it went to a per ADA of general ed. So the budget did get passed. The governor wasn't totally happy with it, but they've been in negotiations, and as I mentioned, there's a new ed trailer bill that got released tonight during the board meeting. And the mid-year cut amount has just bumped up a little bit from 441 by about 20. They said about 20. I think that's because they're still doing calculation to see what it will exactly work out to be. And it may come in the form of a percentage, which sometimes helps us because we're below average funding. So if the funding is based on a percentage of our revenue limit, we might come in $1 or $2 below what the average is for the state. So we'll await additional information, and 45 days after the governor signs the budget, we'll be back to bring you, oh, I just realized that's the old governor picture. I need to get the new one. Oh, man, he's back. I got to bump him out of there. Boy, this is an old fossil of a picture, isn't it?
I'll be back.
Yeah, it's the I'll be back slide. Oh, boy. What would that mean? But meanwhile, we still have to adopt the budget. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, if the COLA doesn't get funded, every time that doesn't happen, it's about $5 million worth of ongoing expenditures of new cuts that have to take place if we don't get a COLA. So that has now piled on for 5 consecutive years, and so it just requires us continuing to go back and address it. And then, of course, the big question mark, will the taxes pass or not? And we won't have an answer for that until November. But then, right around then, we'll be getting ready to bring you the interim report for December, and we'll then look and see what happens. But it is summertime, so we will end this presentation so we don't go late into the night, and we'll open up for questions from the board.
Board members, question for Mr. Richards?
I have a couple of questions. Regarding the potential for mid-year cuts, do we have any idea of what level of mid-year cuts we could affect if we were put in that position, if any? Or are we planning to have that as a set aside so that in the event there's a cut required that we have it available?
For the current year, we do have that reserve set aside to cover because the county required us to have it for the current year. So looking forward, though, in the event that it doesn't happen, we would be much better served to have those conversations and identify what we can do this year earlier, even if we did stop certain types of spending mid-year, just to begin to